Golf's given me everything. I mean, you're looking at an uneducated guy. You're looking at a guy that came off a cotton farm. You're looking at a guy that got in a lot of trouble as a teenager and ended up in the Marine Corps 4 years, and that's kind of straightened my life out. And then I discovered golf.
They were racist. Those 3 words did not come from a protest sign or a courtroom. They came from Lee Trevino, a man who won 6 major championships, a man who beat Jack Nicklaus when it counted most, a man who made every golf gallery feel like a backyard party. Yet this is the man who sat in the dusty parking lot of Augusta National Golf Club, changing his shoes in the seat of his car because walking into that clubhouse was something he chose never to do. Not because he could not get in, because he refused to go. If that already has your blood pumping, smash the hype feature right now and give this video some hype. We are just getting started, and this story goes far deeper than a golf tournament. Most of you know the Merry Mex, the laughing, joke-cracking showman who turned every bunker into a punchline and every birdie into a celebration. The man who played the gallery like a second instrument, who made fans feel like they were watching a friend, not a professional. That version of Lee Trevino was completely real, but the cold reality of his relationship with the Masters tournament told a different story. While every other professional golfer on earth treated a Masters invitation like a gift from above, Trevino treated it like a burden. And eventually, during the peak of his career, during the years when he was arguably the best golfer alive, he simply stopped going. This is the story of why. To understand the grudge, you have to go back to the very beginning, not to the fairways. To a 4-room shack on the outskirts of Dallas, Texas. No running water, no electricity. That is where Lee "Buck" Trevino was born. His path to the PGA Tour did not run through elite junior programs or university scholarships. He left school at 14 to work. He found golf at Hardy's driving range, where he taught himself the game by hitting balls for money he could not afford to lose. No coach, no sponsor, no safety net. He hustled his way from the red dirt of Texas to the world stage on grit, nerve, and nothing else. And he never once forgot that. Now put that image next to Augusta National under Clifford Roberts. Roberts was the club's authoritarian co-founder, and he was not quiet about what he believed the club was for. He stated that as long as he was alive, all the golfers would be white and all the caddies would be black. Read that again. This was not an old relic from a forgotten era. This was the active, declared philosophy of the man running the most powerful golf tournament in the world during Lee Trevino's best years on tour. And Trevino, a Hispanic American who had spent his youth in hard labor and gambling every dollar he had on himself, was now expected to enter this man's kingdom with gratitude and silence. Even after his 1968 U.S. Open victory, where he beat Nicklaus by 4 strokes and announced himself to the entire world, Trevino felt the cold shoulder from the establishment. The older, more powerful figures in golf looked at him with a quiet condescension that never fully disappeared. The fans loved him for exactly the same reasons the committee resented him. He talked, he laughed, he was a disruption, and the committee wanted him managed, not celebrated. At Augusta, that feeling was amplified by everything Roberts had designed into the bones of the club. When Trevino sat in that parking lot and changed his shoes outside rather than inside the clubhouse, it was not about convenience. It was a refusal. A deliberate, conscious refusal to walk into a room where his dignity was already being questioned before he even stepped through the door. The permanent break did not arrive through a single explosion. It built through a series of smaller cuts, each one sharp, each one intentional, each one designed to remind Trevino of exactly where he stood in the eyes of the Augusta establishment. First, there was the ticket situation. The club refused to provide proper arrangements for his guests and his representatives. The exact details were kept relatively private, but the core of it was unmistakable. The committee's refusal felt like a deliberate signal. We decide who matters here, and your people are not on our list. Then came the service entrance. Reports emerged that Clifford Roberts demanded Trevino's driver or caddy use a back entrance to access the club. Think carefully about what that meant to a man like Trevino. This was a man who came from nothing, who valued the people around him as an extension of his own identity, who had never once pretended that the people from his world were beneath the people from theirs. Watching the people he brought with him get redirected to the back door was not an administrative inconvenience. It was a declaration about the social hierarchy of Augusta National, and Trevino heard every word of it. Inside the locker room, things were no better. Trevino later described the atmosphere in there as so heavy with expectation and tradition that he felt like an intruder, not a guest, an intruder. The Green Jackets and their rituals were not simply about golf etiquette. They were about a social order, a carefully maintained hierarchy. And in that hierarchy, men like Lee Trevino were tolerated at best. For a man who had been his own judge and jury since he was a teenager, the idea of being controlled and managed by a committee of men who had never known a day of real hardship was not something he was willing to endure. Here is something worth understanding about how the Masters works differently from other majors. The US Open and the British Open are run by national governing bodies. They operate in the open. The Masters is run by a private club. That means the committee has total authority over everything. The behavior of players, the silence in the galleries, the rules of conduct, the atmosphere itself. Every layer of it is controlled. And for Lee Trevino, whose greatest competitive weapon was his freedom and his voice and his connection to the people watching, that level of control was like being asked to compete with both hands tied behind his back. So in 1970, he skipped the Masters. And in 1971, he skipped it again. 2 consecutive years. During the years he was arguably the greatest golfer on the planet, he simply did not show up to the year's most celebrated major. The golf world was struggling to understand it, but nothing brought the decision into sharper focus than what Trevino did immediately after his 1971 absence from Augusta. After skipping Augusta in April 1971, Trevino went on one of the most extraordinary stretches of dominance the sport has ever witnessed. He began by defeating Jack Nicklaus directly in an 18-hole playoff to win the US Open at Merion. 2 weeks later, he won the Canadian Open. The following week, he captured the British Open at Royal Birkdale, becoming the first player in history to win those 3 national championships in the same calendar year. 3 separate countries, 3 titles, 20 days. Let that settle for a moment. The man who had just taken Nicklaus apart in a playoff, who had just completed a 20-day run that left the entire sport looking for new words, had absolutely no interest in a green jacket. This was not a player struggling with form or searching for confidence. This was the best golfer alive, treating the most storied major in American golf like an event that did not clear his personal bar for dignity. Trevino always kept a professional argument ready whenever the subject came up. He said Augusta did not suit his game. His natural shot shape, a low, piercing fade, was the wrong tool for a course that demanded high, right-to-left draws to hold the firm, undulating greens. He was technically right that Augusta rewards the drawer of the ball. Jack Nicklaus used to commit to converting his natural fade into a high draw specifically for Augusta, spending the entire month before the tournament making that adjustment. Trevino, a product of the windy Texas plains where keeping the ball low was how you survived, never made that kind of mechanical switch. But Nicklaus and other contemporaries never accepted the technical excuse as the real answer. They argued that Trevino's ball striking was so pure and his accuracy so elite that he could have genuinely contended at Augusta regardless of what shape he was hitting. And the evidence is on their side. In 1989, at age 49, years past his competitive prime, Trevino fired a first-round 67 to lead the Masters. He walked into the media center afterward and said, "I'll bet I'm the last person you expected to see here today. I didn't expect it either." The trademark humor was still fully intact, but underneath it lived the undeniable truth. His game was always capable of handling Augusta. What the technical argument really was a shield, a way to dress up a personal protest as a professional decision. If the course was simply unwinnable for him, he had a clean story. But the real story was always the parking lot. There was a deeper psychological piece running underneath all of it. Trevino was a player who needed interaction to compete at his best. The chatter, the jokes, the back and forth with the gallery, this was not just his public personality. It was how his mind worked before and during a round. The humor released tension. The connection to the crowd kept him loose and sharp at the same time. At Augusta, all of that was taken away before the first shot was struck. The club's obsession with silence and controlled decorum stripped his greatest psychological weapon clean off. When he did play there, he described feeling like he was walking on eggshells the entire time. He overthought. He hesitated on shots he would have fired on pure instinct anywhere else. It became a self-reinforcing cycle. Because he felt unwelcome, he played tense. Because he played tense, he played below his level. Playing below his level convinced him the course was unwinnable. Believing the course was unwinnable gave him all the justification he needed to stop returning. He did return to Augusta eventually, largely because Jack Nicklaus spent years working on him, arguing that a career without a genuine run at the Masters left something unfinished. But those returns never felt like a reconciliation. They felt like a professional obligation being met. At the tournaments where he arrived as someone fully welcomed, he won. At the one place where he always arrived as an outsider trying to survive the atmosphere, he never did. In 1988, after missing the cut, he said he would get down on his knees and pray they did not invite him back. That was not a punchline. That was a man who had stored more than 2 decades of real resentment and finally let a portion of it surface. Even in 1989, when he was genuinely leading the tournament at 49 years old, the way he walked into the press room afterwards said everything. Not pride, not relief, just the same old humor wrapped tightly around the same old wound. Now step back and look at the full picture of what the grudge cost and what it actually meant. If Trevino had played Augusta in 1970, 1971 and 1974, with the same fearless freedom he brought to every US Open and British Open he entered, the numbers would look different. Golf historians who have studied his career believe that 1 or 2 more majors during those prime years was a genuine, realistic possibility. That would have pushed his career total to 8 or 9 major championships. 8 or 9 puts him alongside Ben Hogan and Gary Player in the all-time conversation. It changes the way the greatest of all-time debate in golf is written, and a Trevino victory at Augusta would have carried a weight beyond the trophies. Picture it, a man from a Dallas slum, the son of poverty, the kid who left school at 14 and learned golf by betting money he did not have, standing on the 18th green of Augusta National wearing a green jacket. It would have been the most powerful answer Clifford Roberts could ever have received. The hustler in the most exclusive blazer in the sport, at the one place that was built to ensure men like him never got close to it. But that is not the story we got. Instead, we got something that says more about who Lee Trevino actually was than any jacket could. He looked at the most prestigious invitation in professional sport and decided it was not worth the asking price. He refused to be a token. He refused to be managed entertainment for a club that did not respect him or the people around him. Every morning in that parking lot, changing his shoes outside the clubhouse instead of inside it, he was sending a message. I know exactly what you think of me. I am still here, on my own terms, not yours. His stand carried consequences beyond his own career. By refusing to be silenced and contained, he helped crack the image of Augusta as an institution above questioning. For generations of minority golfers who followed him, the message he sent was something that could not be taken away. You do not have to become someone else to earn your place on the world stage. You do not have to accept the service entrance to prove your worth. 29 tour victories, 6 major championships, a 1971 summer that may never be matched. A presence on the golf course that made the whole sport feel worth caring about for people who had never picked up a club. And through every year of it, a sense of self that no establishment, no committee, and no private club could touch. He was never chasing a jacket. He was protecting something that mattered far more. Clifford Roberts could control the silence inside Augusta. He could manage the locker rooms and the service entrances and the ticket lists. What he could never do was reach into Lee Trevino's sense of himself and diminish it. That part of Trevino belonged to a 4-room shack in Dallas and a driving range where a kid with nothing bet everything on himself and nobody handed him a single thing. Some will always call it a tragedy. They count 6 majors and imagine 8 or 9, and they see what stubbornness cost a man. They see the parking lot and think about the clubhouse he never entered, and they call it a waste. But there is another way to read it, probably the more honest way. Lee Trevino looked at the club that had told the world, through its own founders' declared words, exactly who it was and who it was for. He took in the service entrance demand, the ticket arrangement designed to minimize him, and the locker room that made him feel like an intruder in a place he had every right to occupy. And he made his choice. The green jacket was not worth the price being asked, not his price, not the price of where he came from. He had been his own judge and jury since he was a teenager on the range in Dallas, betting on himself because no one else was going to. He played his game in the places that took him completely as he was, and he won. Repeatedly. The parking lot of Augusta National is not a symbol of failure. It is a symbol of something far rarer than a major championship. A man who knew exactly who he was, where he came from, and what he was worth, who refused to surrender any of that for a validation that came attached to conditions he was not willing to meet. Lee Trevino is one of the greatest golfers who ever lived. 6 majors, 29 tour wins. A legacy built entirely on his own terms in his own voice for the fans who were always his real home. He did not need Augusta National to complete his story. The only thing Augusta ever proved is that it needed him far more than he needed it. So here's the debate that has been going on in golf for 50 years. Did Trevino's stubbornness cost him his rightful place in the all-time conversation? Or is he more of a legend because he walked away from the thing everyone else was desperate to have? Drop your answer in the comments below. Tell us your memories of Trevino, especially that extraordinary summer of 1971. Tell us whether the boycott made his legacy smaller or made it larger. And if this story hit you, make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss the next one.